Good day, students. My name is Melinda Coffey, and I will be doing the presentation for Reading Support and Literature, Besp-Rsl42. If you would like to make contact with me, the phone number is on the presentation, as well as the contact times. Okay, so there are just some general notes that I would like to share with you. In order for you to fully understand this specific subject or module, you will have to go through each and every study unit in your study guide, and also go through the learning outcomes, as well as work through each and every learning activity. Usually when you do an assignment, or you are writing an exam, then just look at the mark allocation, because that is a guideline as to what is expected of you. You will know by looking at the marks more or less how many facts you have to give, and then based on what the verb is in the question, you will know then to further explain or describe. So it's important to look at the marks, but as well as the verb that's used within the question. So for example, if they say you have to argue something or critically analyze, then it's not enough to just give the facts. Then you also have to share your own opinion of the specific information. And then if you are writing, please write neatly and legibly so that the marker can understand what you have written. Again, as I said, look for the verb within the question. So this module, Reading and Literature Support, it's all about reading and literature and how it is used within a classroom by the learners. And then also, how can you as a teacher support the learners? So what we need to know is then, what is reading? And reading is the motivated and fluent coordination of word recognition and comprehension. So you'll know throughout the whole study guide, those are words that regularly occur: your comprehension, your fluency, as well as your recognition. So as a teacher, it's basically in your hands to then help to motivate learners, first of all, to want to read, but then also so that their comprehension and their recognition all comes together in a fluent manner. Now, there are 5 stages of reading, and they are all essential. It's important that the child progresses through each stage, because each stage has to be mastered in order to move forward and to do a good job in the next stage. So our first stage is word attack skills. And this is basically where decoding comes in, and that means that each letter within a word has to be decoded or understood by the child, as well as how do you use it, what does it sound like. And then the second stage is comprehension, so understanding the word that is being read. And it's difficult to understand a word that is being read, or to be able to read that word, if you do not first know how to say the letters that is found within a word. So first, word attack skills have to be mastered before we can go on to comprehension. Then our third stage of reading is evaluation. And this is where it is decided that will I use this word or will I not really use this word? And in order to know whether a child will use a word, they first have to understand the word. Then we move on to the fourth stage, which is the application and the retention. So remembering all the words that have been learned by the child, and then also knowing when and how to apply those specific words. So what sentence will I use it in? And in order to know that, you have to understand the meaning of the actual word. And then the last stage is fluency. Now this comes only when all the other stages have been mastered, because you have to know how letters sound in a word, how the word sounds as a whole, what it means, and how to use it in order for this nice, easy flow, this fluency of reading to take place. And it is when the 5th stage is reached, that is usually where reading actually only becomes pleasurable and enjoyable, because now the child is able to put everything together in a very nice way. So that is when the child becomes a good reader, when all 5 stages have been mastered. So each stage is very important on its own and has to be mastered before going on to the next stage. Okay, so there's a number of skills that a child usually has to first know so that reading can take place very easily. And this is your phonemic awareness, your alphabetic principle, fluency, vocabulary, and then lastly comprehension. Okay, so usually when children are reading, it's a lot of the times the parents who introduce them to reading, and then after that, as they go to school, it's the teachers that further instruct reading. And so it's between the parents and the teacher where problems with reading will then be noticed and can then be worked on. So here we have about 4 possible causes of reading difficulty. So this is not reading problems, but reading difficulty. It will make reading difficult for the child to master. And one of them is dyslexia. This is basically where a child struggles with recognizing letters and also knowing the sounds that they make. So often these are children that will read a bit slower and they will really struggle because in their words, it's almost like the letters jump around on the page. The letter doesn't stand still, so they struggle with figuring out where in a word does this letter actually fit in, and then obviously how does it sound when it's where it's supposed to be. Next one is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now this can also just be attention deficit disorder, or if there is a display of like hyperactive behavior where the child is very, very active, then it becomes attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And this is where a child really finds it difficult to sit still and to focus for a very long time. So these are your children who will typically, they will start reading a story and then they will just get very distracted, or they will stop and they will tell you a different story because that long focus is just not possible for them. Another difficulty is auditory processing disorder, and this is where it is a learner has difficulty in processing the information that they hear, because auditory is all about hearing. So they hear the information, but somewhere between the information going in the ear and going to the brain where it has to make sense, there is where the struggle comes in. So they just don't process it very well. And then your visual processing issues is seeing. So it's trouble with what they see and then making the connection in the brain as to what their eyes are picking up. So it's difficult for them to distinguish a difference between letters and shapes. So your B and a P and a D and letters like that, they might tend to all look the same. They might not see that there's an actual difference between them. Okay, and literacy actually satisfies quite a number of aims and psychological needs amongst our learners. And basically it helps learners to survive in the world out there. It helps them to grow and to develop because it teaches them quite a lot. It teaches them about social issues and how to deal with social issues. It teaches them about things like manners and respect. It shows them if they are in a specific situation, what are their possible options? How can they deal with it? And very importantly, it also shows them that there's other people going through the same issues that they go through. So what else does literature do within a classroom setting? How does it help children actually in school? Now, literature helps them to develop these critical thinking skills. And it helps them to understand the world around them. So for instance, when cultural values, they can read up about different cultural values through history, myths, folk tales, stories like that. It teaches them about different cultures and the values and how to deal with things. Then we have also expanding horizons. So literature tells children more about the world out there. tells them how other people do things and how do other people handle issues that come up. So it gives them new ideas and ways of dealing with things. And then it builds vocabulary. The more you read, the more words you know. So literature has a very important place there in the classroom and in the school and in the lives of children, because it broadens their vocabulary, teaches them more words, and it makes taking part in a discussion easier because they have more words, they can share ideas and have a broad knowledge about things. So the best way to learn new words and expand your vocabulary is basically through reading. So it's very helpful. Then literature also improves writing skills for everybody, because when you are reading, you see how words are spelt, how they sound, and then you will be able to also, when you write essays and things like that, you have more words to use. You don't always just use the same words. And then, like we said, teaching critical thinking skills, asking questions. When you're reading about something, literature is there to not just read it and then put it away. Ask questions, analyze what just happened in the story. How do you feel about it? So that is where the critical thinking skills are taught to learners, to not just not question things, but actually question things and then learn new stuff and like that. And understand other people's opinion and form their own opinion about things. So there are also 4 types of reading, and you will note that even as a student, going through your study guide, studying, you basically use a lot of these, probably all of them. We just don't think about it in that way. There is skimming, which is basically where you catch the headline. So you will go through, this is study unit 1's title and maybe the index. You'll see what it is about. That's skimming. It's just catching more or less what is going on. Then there's scanning, where you read through the paragraphs, but you don't read necessarily every word. You just pick up here and there, what is that paragraph about? So it goes a little bit deeper than just skimming. And then intensive reading is where you read with a purpose. You read everything, you go through it in detail because you want to make notes, or you want to understand a process, you have to make a list. And then there's extensive reading, which is reading for fun. So it is like intensive reading, where you still read everything, but you don't plan on making a list or writing notes about it. You're just doing it for fun. So this is where you read for relaxation. You are just reading a storybook or an article in a magazine. And of course, there are various different genres within literature that we expose children to. We have picture books, story books, we have folk tales, myth, fairy tales, poems and dramas, and then biography as well, that is about the lives of specific people. Now, children's literature promotes an understanding of the self, of others, and then the world around them. Literature and reading then promotes a positive sense of self. It promotes the ability to practice self-control, promotes effective decision-making skills, moral systems of belief, and then pro-social connectedness. Because as children read, they are learning different new ideas, and they are being shown various social issues and how to deal with it, and all of this just improves the self and learning how to make decisions and being in control. So when you are a teacher or you work with children, you soon realize that for them, they might be more interested in sports, or they might be people who are interested in watching a lot of television, but very rarely they will say, I am so excited to just be doing my academics. I just want to get to my homework today. And that is why it's important as a teacher to help them to create this balance between having their leisure time, their off time, playing some sports, and doing their academics and their homework. Because sports has its place in a child's life. It improves the self-esteem, it helps with teamwork, it gets them physically active. And then even something like television, video games, the internet, if time is well managed on it, it also has a place in a child's life because it provides, it's a medium of education, and it also provides very needed relaxation for a child. So having this balance between playing sports, watching television, or playing games, and then their academics is very essential that every child is taught how to create that balance. And there are various ways that a teacher can help a child to get there. For instance, get organized and stay organized. As a teacher, you can show a child how to draw up a schedule in which they have their times for sports, for relaxation, as well as their academics. So they have to, on the schedule, indicate when am I writing tests, when am I playing sports matches, when do I have to hand in a project. And then managing time. Now that they know when exactly they have to do what, they can break it down into more detailed time management by saying exactly which hours of the day they are going to spend on what. And then planning the week and not letting the week actually plan them by saying, okay, this week I have all of these things to do, and this is the time in which I will be doing it. There's also using their weekends wisely. Now, usually children are super excited for the weekend. They just want to relax, lay in front of the television, play video games. But this is actually the ideal time to plan for the week ahead, to see what chapters are we going to go through in school this week, and maybe get ahead on a bit of reading. Also, using travel time. Now, some children live very far from their school, so they have a lot of travel time to get there. And this is critical time that can be used to go through notes, to still study for a test, or even to sit and plan. How is my day going to go? When am I going to do what? And then also teach children to not procrastinate or postpone. When they get an assignment, jump on it. Do it as fast as possible. Do not leave it for a day or two before the time. And that actually is something that counts not only for learners in school, but even for you as a student. And then, very important, do not get behind on work, because once you are behind, it's very difficult to catch up. And there's an anxiety that is created, and you feel very pressured to just perform and get there very fast. So, like I said in the beginning, TV and games, the internet, all of those have a place in academics as well, because there are channels on television that actually teach children stuff, like Discovery Channel, where they learn about all sorts of natural occurrences and learn about animals and learn about humans. So that can be a useful tool. But television can also be a family activity. So instead of the child just laying in front of the television at all times, as a family, you can create a specific time where everybody will watch television as a family together, so that you have your family time as well. And then reading is not just about reading for homework. A child can also read in their off time, just as a fun activity. And it's also a very relaxing activity. So it's where they can get relaxation and enjoyment, but also learn something new that they might not have known. So it is essential at the end of the day to help children to manage their time effectively so that everything can be fit in, because all of these activities have a specific place in a child's life. So learners can be prepared for a reading process through the use of specific reading readiness activities, such as your visual perception activities, visual discrimination activities, form constancy, visual memory, sequential memory, visual spatial relations, and then figure ground. So you will see that they are all explained there in detail, and you can just read up further about that. Teachers can apply certain skills when they are reading to senior primary learners. The first is to plan enough time. So you will put aside a specific amount of time, 10, 15 minutes or 20 minutes if you have, to just make sure that you have enough time to actually read through your piece, but also questions can be asked, discussions can be had about the story. Because you do not want to rush through a story and then the child learned nothing at the end of the day. Then it's important to choose stories that learners can respond to, that they are interested in, and that has a connection to the experiences that they are going through in their lives. Otherwise, they will be bored and they won't be interested, and they will more likely fall asleep while you are reading. Then it's important to preview the book yourself. So read through it, set up some questions, and also anticipate what questions might the children ask about this specific story. Then introduce the book, showing them the cover, the author, the title, and in this time you can also even give time for predictions, for them to, based on the cover and the title, what do they think this book is about? So get them interested, get them hooked on the story even before you have read the story. Then when you get to the part where you start reading, it's important to read with expression. Tone of voice is very important when reading to children, because if you're going to use a very plain tone for the entire story, including the voice of the characters, the children will not be really into the story. You need to make allowances for the different characters, adjust your voice and your tone of voice, go up, go down, so that they are interested in the story and not just listening because they have to. Then it's important to allow time for them to study the pictures. It's very good to have a book with pictures when you are reading to children, because that is what they respond to. They will not be able to see necessarily the letters from afar, but they can study the picture and use their imagination to think, what is going to happen next and what is going on in this picture? And you can ask them questions about it. You can encourage them to make predictions about what's going to happen next, based on the picture, based on how far you've read. Then it's important to watch learners' expression and their body language during reading time, because you want to see, are they interested in it? Are they bored by the story? Are they confused by the story? Because then you'll have to explain a bit further. Then save time at the end of the story to get some reaction from the students, from the learners, and find out what did they think about the story. Is it something that's going on in their lives? Can they identify with one of the characters? So give time to not only ask your questions, but also to get some questions from them that you can give them clarification on. And then the last one is to point out the parts in the story that you particularly liked, and then ask them which parts did they like and why did they like those specific parts. So silent reading is a very important tool for children to learn already from a primary school level. Because as they grow older, they're going to spend more and more time having to read by themselves and not someone else reading to them all the time. So it's important to teach them this skill. And some of the ways that they can be prepared for that is by pacing the reading. So you'll start with a small amount, a 5-minute bracket. You will not tell children to read silently for half an hour when it's their first time. You will slowly introduce 5 minutes and then go up in time as they progress through the grades. And then make it engaging. You don't want the child to just be reading straight for 5 minutes and then leave it at that. You want to get them engaged in the story. They can ask each other questions, or you can discuss it as a group or as the class. Then make it relevant. There has to be a connection to the children's lives. They have to see, how does this story actually make sense within my own life or the life of my friend or someone that I know. And then manage the reading. Walk up and down, see how the children respond to reading on their own. Is there maybe someone that's struggling that needs some further assistance? Okay. Usually when children are struggling, they are having a difficulty in reading, it is because they are struggling with a specific part. There was some part that they didn't quite master when they started reading. One of these could be decoding, so understanding letters, what they look like, how they fit into a word, how they sound. It might be that they didn't caught on that one. The next one is comprehension, meaning that they don't understand what the meaning behind the word, or they don't comprehend how that word fits into a specific sentence. And then retention, which means holding on to what you have just read, holding on to the new information you just got. If the information isn't stored, then they cannot go back and remember why the specific thing looks the way that it does. How does this word actually fit in here? Every school has a matter of tests that have to take place. There's standardized tests that requires the children to give through the information. They have to answer questions or discuss it. Like you use your essays and your tests and examinations. All of those are standardized tests that have to be written by children in order to see, do they really understand the work that has been done? And the most common forms are the achievement tests, the international comparison test, and psychological test. And they are all used for different functions, whether to understand or to see whether the child understands the information given in class, or to see if a child is even ready for school, or if they can go on to study further, to determine where their learning problems are. You will use a different test for whichever information you require. Now, an appropriate reading program has specific things that needs to be there. You will know that a reading program is appropriate based on the fact that it provides a variety of genres. So you need to have your biographies, your poems, stories, fairy tales. You have to have a variety of genres. Within a school curriculum, there will not be just only poetry for all grades throughout the entire year. They will go through a few different genres. Then emphasis is usually placed on fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So to make sure that the child is really a good reader and is able to read. Then learners should be supplied with a lot of books so that they can actually read. It cannot be expected of children to read if books are not provided to them. So access to a library is always a good thing. Then reading is a building block for more learning to take place. Reading should not be just seen as a separate entity, but rather as a tool that can be used. If a child can read, they can then, if they can read a simple storybook, they can go on to read a school textbook, which means that they understand and they are able to read the work that they have to know in their other grades. Then the purpose of the reading program has to be at the level, it has to be at the level of the child. So it has to be age specific and age appropriate, and they have to be able to understand what is going on and what they are reading. The program should also appeal to children, and the learning objectives should be very clear. Why am I using these books? What should the children get from it? What should I as a teacher get from it? And then an effective reading program must be planned. You have to know exactly when what is going to happen and how it's going to flow and what exactly are you going to do at which time and with which group of children you're going to do it. Then there's a lot of support that can be offered to children that face reading difficulties, such as making instructions more explicit. Instructions have to be very clear, very detailed, so that children do not know what is expected of them. If you are giving them a project or a reading instruction, tell them, I want you to do this at that time for so long. So don't make it too general, because children that have reading difficulties will then struggle. If a child has attention deficit disorder, you have to make it clear that you want them to sit still for 5 minutes and you want them to focus on this specific paragraph. Otherwise, they will jump around in the book or they will not be reading at all. Providing systematic instructions. So instructions have to be given in a specific order. in a specific sequence. You will not tell them to do step 5 first, and then step 3, and then step 1. You have to be clear about what you want, exactly in which steps you want it. Then increasing opportunities for practice. It's very important that especially children with difficulties in reading have enough time to practice. And as a teacher, you might have to sit with them, you might have to work through it with them, to make sure that they have enough time and that they really understand. You also might have to encourage them to continue outside of school hours as well. And feedback is very important, to tell the parent and the child how far they are and what they still need to do. And then applying skills and strategies in meaningful text. So helping children to be able to apply certain skills and certain strategies, because if they have a difficulty, they need to be taught more skills, more strategies for how to read, and then also how to apply these specific skills. So these are sort of the general and the broader support that can be offered, but there's also specific support that a teacher can offer children that struggle with things like stammering, rhythm, intonation, and vocabulary. If we take the first one, for example, stammering, that can be a problem that can really break down a child's self-confidence and make them not want to read and not want to speak in front of a class. So as a teacher, you have to maybe take the child aside and really show them that you can give them that time. As long as it takes for them to get the sentence or the word out, you will listen to them. And you are not listening to their problem in speaking, but you're actually listening to the story that they are telling you. And then teasing and bullying in schools is something that's really a problem. So the minute that children have these specific problems that they struggle with, these are things that they are going to face. And as a teacher, you will have to address issues like teasing and bullying by equipping the child with skills, with self-confidence, but also addressing the actual teasing with the other children as well. And then also reading aloud in class might be an issue for a child that stammers. They might feel that they are being laughed at by other children, that other children are irritated because they take long to speak. So to deal with this, you can make smaller reading groups, maybe only 2 children together, or make a group of the children that are stammering that you sit with them while they are reading. And then do not tell the child what to do. Just let them be themselves and let them get their story out in the time that it takes them. Now, in the modern times that we are now, there's also place for things like digital video cameras and audio recordings to be used for learners in order to help them with their studies and with doing projects. So there's quite a number of ways in which, for instance, video cameras can be used in the class. It's a way for them to do their projects. They can make little newscasts about what's going on in the class, make like a video newspaper, diary or journal entries. And then your sound recordings can be used for children these days to make notes for themselves. So they record themselves, the information that's in the textbooks, and when it comes to study time, they can just play it back to themselves. And in this way, they are actually learning while using this technology. So this is the end of the presentation, and I wish you all the best with your exams and with your assignments. Thank you very much.